For you, the listeners of JavaScript Jabber, Loot Crate is offering an opportunity to save 10% on any new subscription at lootcrate.com. Just enter the promo code BRIDGE10 for 10% savings. Loot Crate is one of my favorite things. Every month I get a box in the mail, costs less than $20, and it comes with all kinds of goodies. I have stuff from, just looking at my shelf, Batman, Spider-Man, Ninja Turtles, Back to the Future, Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, and much, much more. So if you're a geek, a gamer, anything like that, and you want cool stuff to put around your office, cool t-shirts, comic books, etc., then definitely check out Loot Crate. To save 10% on your new subscription, go to lootcrate.com/Ruby. Again, that's lootcrate.com/Ruby to save 10% on any new subscription. Enter the promo code BRIDGE10 for 10% savings. Hey everybody, and welcome to another JavaScript Jabber. You hear the echo in the room? That's because we're live at Microsoft Connect. I'm here with PJ Meyer and Chris Dias.
Oh, well said. Nobody gets that right.
I cheated. They said your name in the keynote.
It's true. Okay.
And we've had you on the show a few times.
Yeah,
so
yeah. It's been a while.
Yeah. It was like 6 months or something. No, I think it was last year. Yeah, because Build, I think we talked to, now I have to remember names.
Wade
and
Ramya.
So yeah, if you're interested in what's changed over the last 6 months, go listen to that and go listen to this. Now you did a demo at the keynote.
I did. We did. We all did it together.
And I was sitting there going, I need that. So do you want to talk? Well, let's just dive right in.
All right.
Which part?
Which part?
Live sharing.
Live collaborative editing and debugging.
Yeah. Now, I did talk to Amanda Silver about 2 hours ago, and we kind of talked around it a little bit, but I wanted to dig in and just be like, what is this thing, right? So
Sure, okay. I think she's going to have more information than I am.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see what she said. But okay, so let's see where to start. I guess I could describe the demo.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So so basically the premise is this, right? It's a lot of times where you'll go to somebody and say, hey, you know what, can you come over here and help me sort of debug this? Like, yeah, I understand what's going on with the debugger, but I don't understand why it doesn't work. And it's great when somebody's sitting in the room and you can just call them over and you can sit side by side. But if they're not, then it's pretty challenging, right? Like if you do screen sharing, there's a lot of like, all right, do this, don't do that, oh wait, back up, oh I didn't see that change because of latency and things like that. But at the end of the day, really what's happening in that scenario is the other person is looking and trying to understand your source code, and then you're both stepping through the code and understanding what's going on, looking at variables and call stacks and things like that. So what Visual Studio Live Share really tries to do is collaborative editing and debugging. And I think it's the debugging part, which is really the sort of killer aspect to the whole experience. So what we did today was basically, I have a Node application that's running on my machine on a Mac in VS Code, and on another machine which has Visual Studio, doesn't have Node, doesn't have my workspace.
Right.
I basically created or provided a connection to that workspace on my machine, gave it to Amanda, and she was able to connect to it with Visual Studio. And what's cool about that, and actually when we started preparing the demo, we trimmed it back a little bit. What we originally did is we did debugging of a Node application running in a Docker container. Mm-hmm. And that's even more things that weren't on her machine. But she got all the context of everything that was running on my machine. And just at that point, then she's able to sort of inspect all the variables, do everything that she needs to do to understand what's going on without that, hey, can you do this, can you do that type of back and forth that goes on. And I think the other interesting thing for me with this scenario, when you look at like developer productivity features, there's usually this moment where you go, oh, I get it. And if I don't have that, I'm going to be very angry, right? Because it's like, don't take away my thing. And, like for me, like coding without IntelliSense is almost, you might as well just close my eyes and start typing. So literally 2 or 3 weeks ago, as we were putting all these parts of the demo together and trying to figure out the right flow, I was originally working on sort of most of the Azure things, and we were trying to incorporate the collaborative side of things. And I was running into an issue with a Docker extension.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in a bit of a panic. And we had a sort of a Monday morning team call, which half the folks are in Switzerland and the other half are in Redmond. I said, is there anybody that can help me? I'm getting this exception that's getting thrown. I can't, there's no call stack, all this crazy stuff. And one of the guys in Switzerland said, yeah, we'll stay on the call after and we'll debug it. And we get on the call and it was this like, okay, wait, go back to that file again. You just closed it. All right, no, stop, hold right there. All right, stop, step debug, step over. And I'm just like, and it's just lag. And it was this painful experience. And I'm like, oh my God, if I just had this thing that we're building, to demo and do the scenario and all that stuff, like that would not have been a problem.
Right.
And it was right there, like the sort of the light bulb went off for me. I was like, okay, yeah, let's, this is the thing. So for me, that's kind of like the magical part of it. And I do honestly believe it's kind of the next step in the evolution of developer productivity. And I really, really believe that it's the debugging part. And I think if you saw any of actually they're going on right now, but other breakout sessions, there's a ton more things that are being shared that we can sort of do between machines, which are all about that context and letting other people sort of investigate what's on your machine without having to create that environment. And that's the cool thing about it for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty cool. I mean, I've used, I can't even remember, but there's a program out there that you can share your screen on, and it's free if it's non-commercial use, which I was like, whoa, what's the point? And, everybody's going to use this for commercial use. And then I've used like Tmux, and so you both shell into the same machine and you share a session that way. And yeah, I'm just sitting there going, well, she just opened it up in the editor of her choice with her plugins loaded, and you could do the step debugging and she could see what you were looking at, but she could also interact in whatever way she does. So you have Emacs bindings installed, she doesn't. Exactly. No big deal.
Yep.
It's like, oh, wow, I can get help from anybody, right? Yep. As long as they have this program and they were willing to connect to the service.
Yeah, and the other thing too is like, there's a lot of context breakdown that you have to do. Like if I said, here, go clone this repo, like all the stuff that you're working on, you basically have to stash it, put it somewhere else, do all this other work. And it's a huge context switch.
Check out the branch.
Yeah.
Install Node.
Yeah, exactly. And in this case, I mean, there's still a context switch from what you're working on, but there's no context switch on the workspace that you have to go and create and install and get to that place. And that's pretty powerful too.
Yeah. That's totally true. Yeah. You go install Node, npm install. Okay, I can help you in an hour. Yeah. Yeah, it was just amazing. I mean, I'm just looking at it and going, every time I think they can't come up with another cool feature for Visual Studio Code.
Yep. Yeah. No, so I'm really looking forward to having it come out because I just want to dog food it. I just want to start using it. So
yeah. When does it come out? Because it looks like, and I kind of got the impression from Amanda that it wasn't quite publicly available.
No, right now you can sign up for access to the preview when it becomes available. I don't know what the time frame is on the preview. Do you?
Early 2018.
Early 2018.
Tomorrow, or will people will watch the keynote and then gouge their eyes out because they want it today?
It's a good thing and a bad thing.
Yeah.
No, but I think people should definitely go and sign up, and then it's this world, this model where it's kind of like just get a few people, do experiments, get the feedback on it, instead of trying to come up with the big thing and having the big release.
Right.
Like, is what we've done in the past with Visual Studio, right? We've now got blah. And people are like, yeah, how many people did you spend on that? You don't quite have that right.
Right.
So it generally works out better to have these sort of slower rollouts and bring people on and get feedback on it. So I think it's the right model. And I think it's a good time to sort of get people jazzed about it. So, but it is a long time to wait. It's the holiday season though, so it's a few days off in between. It's like a Christmas present.
There you go.
Or a holiday present.
Nice. So it seems like we talk, once a year or whatever. And it's like, all right, what's up with Visual Studio now? So what's up with Visual Studio now? Like what else are we seeing that's happened over the last year that people are excited about?
Oh God. I mean, the biggest thing for VS Code is that we finally released support for multi-root workspaces. And so this is the ability to have multiple top-level root nodes open at the same time. Previously, you had to have multiple windows or multiple instances of VS Code open, which is good, but then you have to do window management, which is kind of a pain. And we've actually been, this is the biggest open feature request that we've had for the longest time, and it took us a very long time to sort of land it. It's about 5 months, I think it's been available in some form in the insiders release of VS Code. And it's really, it's pretty close. We considered releasing it or turning on in stable a month back, but we wanted to have a concerted push to get sort of the top extensions updated to support multi-root workspaces. And so the past month, that's a lot of what we did was really just sort of, we reached out to all the top extensions, sort of almost handheld people like, hey, can we make a pull request, get it up? And it was pretty cool to watch because there was a bunch of extensions like, yeah, we'll get that done today. We'll push out a release, next week or something like that. And so people jumped on it very, very quickly. But that's been the biggest thing that sort of has been released over the past couple of months. There's other things that came out like in the last milestone, the ability to move the panel that's been at the bottom, which is horizontal. You can make that vertical now. So if you've got a wide screen, you can move that around. You can move things around in that itself so you don't have to fix positions anymore. What else, Peach?
Language support. We released the Python extension. Beginning of October, I think, we released a Java Debugger. So we're going to it's sort of what you said, we come together once a year and talk about what's new. We sort of did the same thing as a team as we were coming up to Connect. And we had put together a blog post of like what's been going on in the past year. Every month, just so much comes out that it ended up being quite a long blog post. But live share, one thing that we didn't get to show in the keynote today was debugging inside a container using Docker Compose. And that was something that we were also going to show over Visual Studio Live Share. So being able to debug on a different editor in a different machine on a different OS from inside a Docker container.
Wait, run that by me again.
So today what we demoed was Node running on my machine on a Mac.
Right.
Amanda didn't have Node installed on her machine. What we were going to do in the demo was actually run and debug a Docker container running on my machine running a Node app from Amanda's machine, which didn't have Docker or Node or anything else. Oh, wow. Yeah. So it was just a sort of another layer in the whole mix. Just to kind of make the point, like it's really the shared debug session. It's not running stuff over there. And really the only reason we took it out was just a matter of time, right? It's just one more thing that you have to sort of explain what's going on. But it's pretty cool. It works like a champ. It was wild. Yeah.
Yep. And I love all the Docker integrations that come in Visual Studio Code. I mean, Docker is, it's simple in concept, as far as what it does and sort of how it works. But then actually getting things set up in it, I still see people tripping over it all the time.
Yeah, there's an art form to the Docker file.
Yeah. It was funny, actually, in the run-up to the keynote and practicing, trying to get the demo configured. I've used Docker for a while outside of VS Code. And we're trying to get things set up and resetting. And I keep typing out these, long commands in the terminal. And at the same time, Chris is like, why can't you just click that button in VS Code? That would have done all of that. Like, I really should spend more time with the Docker extension.
Yes.
Yeah.
You should.
But it's that kind of stuff, right? This stuff is easily automatable. It's something you do a lot of the time when you're using Docker, and it just okay, well, plug in, go. It just puts all those pieces together for you. And
Yeah. The cool thing, I think, the cool latest thing that I would love to be able to figure out how to do in the Docker extension is this notion of multi-stage build Docker files. Have you played with those yet? Blow your mind out of the water. Like, first Docker, you're like, really? Okay, and then you get it. You're like, okay, this is awesome. But basically, with a multi-stage Docker file, what you can do is define basically what happens in different layers of the build process. So what you can do is, for example, in your first layer, you can do a development build of your output.
right.
And then you save that off into some named thing. And then in your second layer, you install all of your production dependencies. And then you save that off. And then your third layer, you combine those two things together. And so you can automate the build process that uses development resources all in one big step. And so it's a little bit hard to say, okay, the Docker extension can just figure out that you need to do that, so it's a scaffold or anything like that. But that's actually, I think, one of the pretty cool things that's coming along there that we want to add in.
Nice.
But before I could spend all day talking about Docker. But a couple of other things I thought about as far as new things that have come out with VS Code over the past year. There's another thing, this was in the blog post, I think, as well, but I mentioned this morning. The plain JavaScript experience in VS Code is actually driven by the TypeScript compiler.
Yes.
And so you get all the goodness of TypeScript. And if you're doing TypeScript as well, you get all that goodness. But what we're seeing now is a lot of quick fixes and refactorings coming out of the TypeScript compiler that we can then start to leverage in VS Code. We're starting to see more and more of those things come online, which is very cool. What else?
One thing that you also showed off in the keynote, and when you mentioned that you can have 2 top-level folders, is kind of what brought it to mind because it's what it looked like. But serverless is taking off, and you showed that you can deploy functions to Azure Functions, and they're not part of your app. I mean, they're part of the wider environment, but a lot of times we build out pieces in services. And then you have things like microservices that run in Azure Functions that are essentially just snippets of code that script along and connect to infrastructure.
Yep.
And you just wrote it up, spun it up. It was gone. And if you've ever tried, like Azure Functions is fairly approachable, but I've done stuff with like AWS Lambdas and trying to get all of the right permissions set up and all of that garbage. And then did it actually run, and then debugging the thing? Oh my gosh. I mean, what a royal pain. And you can spin them up out of Visual Studio Code and debug the freaking things. I was just like, oh man, that would have saved me hours of my life.
That was another thing that we had to trim down from the demo today, just purely from time.
There's more. That makes me happy.
This is going to become like the director's cut of the...
This is the director's cut of the demo. Yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah.
There's other things that I wanted to put in the demo, but we had to trim it down for time. But with the Azure function extension, there's a button in there. You just click on it. It says new function. Where do you want to put it? But then it says, what's the trigger, right? And the most basic one is just an HTTP trigger, right? It's just
that's pretty common.
Yeah. So boom, put that, scaffolds it out, breakpoint F5, click on the link, you've got your function. It's like 30 seconds. 30 seconds we couldn't do in the demo, but still. Yeah. But the ease of getting up and running, and again, it's the debugging of it locally on your machine is just mind-blowing to be able to do that. The thing that was really, but that's sort of easy, right, with the HTTP trigger, right? It's just localhost, whatever.
Yeah.
The thing we tried, and I don't know how well it came across at the end of the day in the demo that we did today, but the trigger on the function that we ran was a Cosmos DB database trigger. And that Cosmos DB is in the cloud.
Right.
And that database in the cloud changed, and the function ran on my machine.
Whoa.
Yeah. So that was just...
That's awesome.
That's what happened. So when people tweeted about it, we updated the database in the cloud running a service, and we were running the function locally. And it's literally the exact same runtime that runs up in the cloud.
Right.
So, so it's kind of mind-blowing. Like, what happened?
And it's a special link between Cosmos DB and Azure Functions, where you basically just say you want to use this Cosmos DB trigger, and whenever data changes in the cloud, the function will get run.
Yeah.
Without any sort of extra configuration on your part. To try to make that stuff work.
Amazing.
Yeah. Very cool stuff. So you can very easily create new functions and configure them however you want the trigger to be fired, and then
If you need to, you can debug them locally.
and you can debug them locally, and then to deploy it, basically it's a right click, and there's a number of ways to set up deployment. The most simplistic way is we zip the thing up, and we just upload it to the function. It gets unpacked up there through the API and the function, and then that's it. It's running.
Yeah, I think that's how serverless does it.
Yeah.
On a lot of those systems, is it unpacks it to like S3 or storage on Azure, and then
Storage on Azure. Yep.
and then it scoots it over. It says this is code.
Yep, exactly. So it's a pretty cool extension. There's actually quite a few functions for Azure that have sort of blossomed and come online in the past 3 or 4 months. So the Azure Functions one, App Service, the Cosmos DB one, which we showed today, lets you. One thing we didn't get to show today is that we're actually publishing the sentiment data to a graph in Cosmos DB, and in VS Code.
A graph like you generally think of graph data. So
Yes.
it's not just a document database then.
No, it's a graph data with vertices and edges and all that goodness.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So we basically take the tweets and the sentiment and the hotel, and we publish it up into a graph database. And with the Cosmos DB extension, you can drill into your collection and basically run a gremlin query right in the tool, and you get a nice graph visualization of it. It's still pretty early, but the idea is that you can sort of iterate, what we call the inner loop on the gremlin queries that you're going to write in your code right there in the tool. Okay, that thing looks good. I kind of drill around, blah, 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 and I get that. I can just go paste it back into my app. But we had to cut that because of time. This is we had to cut that because of time episode. So that one has come out. There's an Azure CLI extension, which will give you a rich IntelliSense experience, which we're writing Azure CLI commands. Did I cover them all? Cover them. Of course, the Docker extension. The Docker extension one's interesting because it will light up if you have the Azure account extension installed on your machine. So if you don't have the Azure account or any other Azure extensions, you don't get any Azure-y stuff. Right. Because if you're not doing Azure and you're just doing Docker, then you don't need to see all that.
Right. So the fact that Chris is able to go into the Docker extension and right-click on an image and say deploy to app service, that's because he had Docker and the Azure extension installed. Yeah. Otherwise, it wouldn't be there, and it works like Docker.
Yep. The other cool thing, so all these extensions share this single, we call it the Azure account extension. And basically, if you log into your subscription, you do the device login dance. And then all the other extensions just basically ask this one extension for all your subscription information. So there's not multiple logins all over the place, right? It's one single experience. But the other cool thing about that is extension, if you've seen this in the Azure portal, where there's the Cloud Console, where basically you can spin up a console in Azure, have full access to the CLI, it's mounted storage, you can persist files there. But you can do the same thing directly in VS Code. So you say open up a Cloud Console, the terminal window opens up, and it's actually connected to your Azure instance subscription. So that's a pretty wild thing to go and because all of a sudden you're working. It's like SSHing, but it's not, right? You're like, okay, but there is a container running up there. This is the most mind-blowing thing. Because of the simplicity of the extensibility model of VS Code, it's really just doing standard in, standard out piping of what's coming back and forth over the wire from the Cloud Console. And it just worked. It's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So cool stuff that's coming out there. What else has come out in the tool?
I have another thing I want to ask
about. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. There was a whole bunch of talk about AI right at the end, that last section of the keynote. And it sounded like there were a bunch of AI tools for Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code.
So this was the Azure Databricks session. Or was it the AI keynote that Seth did?
It was the AI keynote that Seth did.
Okay.
Yeah, they I mean, they did the Databricks, and that
Yep.
looked really freaking cool.
That is pretty cool. That was the first time I saw that.
But yeah, it sounded like there were some other AI tools that were in or were coming to Visual Studio. Maybe I misunderstood that. I mean, some of it's in Azure, and I'm assuming you poke it from Visual Studio. I don't know.
We were at Katz's Deli. No, actually, I didn't see that part of the AI keynote.
You stole my pick, but I guess one of the nice things about how easy it is to extend VS Code is that a lot of the extensions that are built from VS Code aren't built by the VS Code team themselves. They're from teams all across Microsoft.
No, but I'm thinking about like the Jupyter Notebook extension for VS Code, where basically you can write your Python code, and on the right hand side you get this really cool visualization, sort of live. And I do know that I think you said that we released that was the Java Debugger that you're talking about. But the Python tools have been updated, and there's I'm sure that they're doing work there as well. But I guess I'm a little bit uneducated in this space. I can't answer that question.
It's totally fine. So what are you working on now? What's coming up in Visual Studio Code?
Let's see. So like I said, we had this big push with Belt-to-Root Workspace, and we're kind of closing into the end of the calendar year. So the next milestone is kind of just a feature, for the most part, a featureless milestone. And it'll span, November, December timeframe, and we're really focused on, debt, bug fixing, performance, things like that. And from there, what is on the roadmap? There are so many things.
You can go to GitHub and check.
I know we published it all up on GitHub.
If only we had a small device that was portable that could connect to the internet and tell us these things.
This episode is sponsored by Linode. Linode is offering listeners of this podcast a $20 credit, which is good for 4 free months at their lowest plan. Their plans start at 1 gigabyte of RAM for $5 a month. You can get your servers in any of their 10 data centers, and their high memory plans start at 16 gigabytes. Get a server running in under a minute. They do hourly billing with a monthly cap on all plans, and add-on services like backups, node balancers, Longview, etc. VMs for full control, running Docker containers, encrypted disks, VPNs, etc. You can run a private Git server. They provide native SSD storage, 200 gigabit network, and Intel E5 processors. They have 24/7 friendly support, even on holidays, and a 7-day money-back guaranteed. So go check them out at linode.com/JavaScriptJabber.
Okay, yeah, now I remember. Sorry. Let's see. So over the next 6 months or so, what we're really focused on, like I said earlier, which is we're starting right now, is like performance, memory usage, dead code, startup performance. And
can I stop you real quick? Because you're talking a lot about performance, but are people actually having performance issues with Visual Studio Code? Or is this we just want to make it better because we want to make it better?
So in general, we want it to be better. And yes, there are some performance issues on Windows. So I'll go on both sides of that. So, an editor is not a very, it's the worst word I can come up with, but it's the most accurate, which is like a sticky tool, right? Like if you were patient enough with us and you tried out VS Code a couple of times, and you finally got to the point where you liked it and you came over, you going back to another tool is as easy as you coming to the tool.
Right.
And one of the key value propositions of VS Code is the fact that it's fast. And so we feel like if we don't keep on top of that, then it's easy for us to lose the folks that easily came to us because they didn't like the performance of something else. Right. So that's one major driver of our work in fundamentals and performance. And the other driver of it is that what we see when we look at our telemetry data is that startup performance on Windows is increasingly regressed. Right?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, as compared to other platforms. And we did a big fix actually just before this release where we oh my God, 80% of the time back from the past 6 or 8 months, which was awesome. But so we track it across all 3 platforms. We want to make sure that everybody on every platform is having a great experience, and it's throughout the entire stack. So we work with the Electron folks, in our own source code control. We work with the Windows Defender guys to make sure that we're not getting flagged incorrectly and impacting startup in that way. We look at our setup performance, things like that. So we're not getting a ton of feedback that says, oh, you're getting slow. We do get feedback that says you're not as fast as, say, Sublime. We're like, okay. But we don't want to have that be a thing that stops people from coming from VS Code. So we take it very seriously. So that's the performance thing.
Sorry, I derailed you, but
no. It's a great question, and from you hearing what I was saying, I think it's a very valid question. Like, wait a minute, what's the problem? Yeah. So you kind of want to stem it before it actually happens. So that's one of the big things that we're investing in, and it's a costly thing, right? Because you have to chase it down and you chip away at it.
Oh, I'm
percentage at a time. So that's one thing. Did we talk about TypeScript and refactorings and all that stuff? So as TypeScript didn't we talk about this? Sorry. So what we expect from the TypeScript compiler, which drives the JavaScript language service, and obviously TypeScript, is more refactorings and more quick fixes and things like that.
Oh, right.
Yes, we're going to bring those. So we basically surface those back up in the tool, which is very cool. From a UI perspective, I talked about this before. We go horizontal, vertical layout of the pane at the bottom, and you can move the tabs around. We get a lot of requests from people about the ability to do more management of the editor layout inside VS Code. So they want to be horizontal and vertical at the same time. So that's another big thing. Our notification system, which irritates you when it irritates you, and other times it's nicely off in the distance. But we get irritated by it, right? Like you get an extension, a rogue extension that decides that every time it updates itself, it has to ask you if you want to read a blog post about what happened, and you're like, no, right? And there's 18 buttons. So we think that the notification system has reached its point of scalability. So we want to go and sort of overhaul that and have something that lets us accomplish the things that we do with the notification system, like, hey, there's a new update, go get it, because that's good for us, and we think it's good for you. But also lets us hide the, hey, go look at 15 pages of release notes right now, right? Which doesn't have to happen right now. Yeah. So there's a lot of that's going on. Let's see, source code control. Actually, we just did a lot of source code control stuff that we had talked about earlier. This is one of the cool things that we didn't get to demo at all, even though I wanted to in the demo today. In the last milestone, source code control status is actually displayed in the Explorer view. And so nodes will be turned different colors. So if you made a change or add, and you get the little glyph that you see in the view. But what's also cool is in the editor itself, there's change bars on the left side of the editor to the right side of the numbers. If you hover over that, it'll actually expand. And if you click on it now, it'll actually show you inline in your editor the diffs.
Oh, nice.
And you can stage it right from there, or you can undo it right from there. And then once you click on a stage, it'll actually bring you to the next diff in your file where you can sort of just partially stage things right across. So you don't have to go over to the source code control view to do that. So that's a pretty cool update. We're doing a lot of work on extension recommendations, right? Because there's the core of VS Code. We want to keep it the core. And then if you're doing Python, then you get the Python extension. Right. And today we do recommendations really based on the files that you opened, which, it has pros and cons, right? Like one of the things, we just fixed this, but the problem was this, like you may have clicked on a Python file 3 months ago. It was a mistake. You don't do Python. You're just browsing around. You're going to get prompted to install the Python as a recommended extension every time, and it's going to be right at the top because it's a highly used extension. Right. And so what we want to do is sort of decay things over time. We want to provide the ability to show you why we recommended the extension. Right. We want to do things like, hey, you know what? You use this extension, and other people that use that extension also have these 3 other ones. It's like going to Amazon. Like people also shopped for. And because it's that sort of what are your friends using thing, which is really a good recommendation versus we decided. But your friends' recommendations are way better than us picking a file type. So lots of work there to improve extension recommendations. Anyways, so that's sort of things off the top of my head. But as we were talking about before, we published the roadmap and the wiki in GitHub. So everything that we're planning on doing is up there. We just, like I said, published the longer term roadmap, which covers a lot of things that we talked about. And then on every milestone, again, we do our iteration planning where we publish all of what we're going to do in that time frame. So continuing to, drop a lot of cool new features.
Nice.
Yeah.
One thing that I wonder about a little bit is just getting the word out about code. I mean, is it mostly word of mouth, or is Microsoft kind of, besides the keynotes, pushing the word out much?
It turns out it is mostly word of mouth.
And virtual word of mouth on social media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. You get somebody that you see it on Twitter, they convert over to code, they get a bunch of followers, and then all of a sudden you see this nice little progression after that. And so, we try to be active on Twitter, and if we see people coming online, we kind of just help them out. But we think that's the best way that people will actually go and adopt it. I think it's you that said this, right? It's like somebody's got to see it 2, 3, 4 times before they're actually going to use it. So we just try to get the word out as much as possible. And we use sort of the Microsoft events, which really the thing about VS Code is that it's trying to sort of create a connection with developers that Microsoft traditionally can't talk to. Mm-hmm. So Connect event may not be something that developers that we want to actually reach out to actually pay attention to.
Right.
But when we do have an event like this, we try to, get the message out, and we use that it's a pretty big pipeline to developers that we reach with the Connect event. So we'll participate in that. But we really think the viral nature of it is the best way to go and get people to sort of learn about it and then start to adopt it.
Yeah, that's something that Richard Campbell said last night when we were chatting. He's like, people like he and Carl are already talking to the Microsoft folks, and they're the people who are paying attention to the keynotes and getting excited about the announcements and stuff like that. And then he said that the reason they bring in people like us, JavaScript Jabber, some of the other shows that are here, is because we don't reach that core group, right?
Yep.
And so it's that same outreach, right? It's somebody that people are listening to or paying attention to, not because of Microsoft, but because of something else. And Visual Studio Code comes up. Hey, this tool does these things that make my life better. And so they go try it out. Yeah,
it's like one of the reasons why we have like code.visualstudio.com versus us being a part of the larger Microsoft visualstudio.com. Because we try to sort of drive, people doing searches and stuff to go there and not as part of the major Microsoft landing pages. But it's to try to get around and outside of where we traditionally talk to people. But again, that's the goal. It's like how can we break down the barriers and just raise awareness? So a lot of people that like Microsoft is not relevant.
Yeah.
Right? And so we figure, well, we've got a tool that's pretty cool. We think it's going to improve your development experience. And then maybe at that point, Microsoft becomes relevant in the next thing that they go and look at.
Right.
And that's what's good for us. And quite honestly, if they just get a great tool out of it, but they recognize us and or Microsoft as being, positive contributors to the community of development tools, then that's just generally good for everybody, right? Like, nobody wants to be ignored or not liked. That's one aspect of it, but I think a better aspect, the way that we think about it, is we just want to contribute into that community. And if people want to do something else, that's great. If not, then we feel good because we were able to contribute something back to the developer community, which we were all a part of.
Right.
So it's my very deep. But that's the truth, right? So it's,
Do you have numbers as far as adoption goes or anything like that?
So in our blog post that for this event, we shared that the number of people using VS Code in the month of November was about 2.6 million.
Oh, wow. It's nothing to scoff at.
Yeah, so quite a pop over the course of the 2.5 years that we've been public. We've been open
Open source.
We've been open source for 2 years.
Yeah, we
Did it
keep
here.
doing the math wrong today,
Yeah.
don't we?
But we were in.
It's the third Connect.
There's a public beta before.
Yeah.
Open source did.
So this is the third Connect, but so the one 3 years ago, or it's actually 2 years ago,
Yeah.
is where we went open source. But it's the third Connect since then. So we've been up too late working on demos. Our math is a little rusty.
Yeah.
So pretty good numbers.
Yeah.
We're happy
absolutely.
with it, but there's more to do.
Yeah. So how much growth is that month over month?
How many months is that? You did the math.
Chris just talked about us not being able to 2 and 3 years ago. So
Okay.
I think that math question.
Wait, let me get the calculator out.
I'm just wondering, do you see it accelerating now, or has it been pretty steady?
It's been pretty steady. We see trends over
Right.
time. Like initially, we saw lots of people try the tool, but there was lots of missing features, and then we've seen them sort of come back. We've seen little bumps when we have these types of events. We see holiday lulls, things like that. But in general, it's been a fairly good progression up. There's no magical spike or anything like that. But
Right.
it's just solid, steady growth, which is, I think, good. Right?
Uh-huh.
There was no like one big thing we did and then that's it.
Right.
So
And I think it's also it's good. I think motivation to make sure that every month when a new stable release comes out, that we have a lot of things to talk about, so we can stay in that conversation and have people share tweets about what new feature they just discovered, whether it was a feature that just came out or a feature that maybe had been out for a while, but
Right.
they just discovered it or rediscovered it. There's a lot of times that happens where there's now so much there in the editor that people that work at Microsoft, we work with every day,
Command
Chris-
D.
Yeah,
My
Chris.
favorite.
I think that's how that made that in the demo so strongly. It was because he was just doing that casually, and all of us were like, "Wait, I didn't know you could do that way." You just select and keep selecting with Command D. You gotta put that in the-
But like I said earlier, it's there's growth, but because an editor is not necessarily sticky,
Right.
you gotta continue to sort of be open, deliver features, and show progress, and people will stay engaged. If it becomes stale, people are going to go, all right, this is a dead end for me. Where else am I going to go?
Right.
So there's a lot of just that grind that we do, but it's necessary.
Right.
It pays off.
So what do you envision Visual Studio Code becoming? It seems like, there's this steady progression. You keep adding in tools that make it easier to write code. Do you think you'll ever run out of things like that make it easier to write code, or, maybe it'll evolve into something else, or I don't know.
No, I think we'll continue to try to innovate on developer productivity, like we're trying to do with the collaborative editing and development experiences.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's interesting because it's an editor. You want that core to be so lean and
Right.
mean, which is like add
Yeah.
more stuff is more code, which so you get
Right.
what that trade-off is. So I think over time you'll see more and more of our activity will be in the extensions that
Right.
are around it and we just put a whole ton of activity or effort into bootstrapping a bunch of Azure extensions. And if you don't use Azure, you can use some other platforms. It's fine. But man, if you do, there's a lot of great functionality that's there.
Right.
And what we try to do is we say, okay, what do we need? And from all these extensions, and are there common things that we could do in the platform itself that would benefit every extension? And if there are, we go and we add that. So like you see these sashes where you can contribute things to the Explorer. Well, that's just generally good for everybody.
Right.
So we try to push things down that are good for everybody. But yeah, I don't know. There's just such a long backlog of things to do. Key bindings and you could do those forever. That I don't feel like we're going to run out of anything soon. But I do think we'll see more effort or focus on extensions, collaboration. I think that just outside of VS Code, I think that there is a model of there's a bridge between sort of cloud tools and client tools, which I think hasn't been met yet. Like we started out VS Code as this thing, Visual Studio online Monaco, right? It was a browser-based thing.
Yeah.
And its big problem was the fact that you had to do everything in the browser. There was no...
Right.
You see lots of those tools kind of come and gone, browser-based tools.
Yep.
And everybody's doing stuff on the client, but there still feels like there's a model here where you can spin up. We saw a little bit of this today with the Azure Container Service development experience in Connect, where it's basically you're developing against a container that's running up in Kubernetes. It's running in an environment. You can spin one up very easily, and then you can connect to it. And sort of you kind of work with it like it is local, but when you're hitting F5, you're actually running it up in the cloud. And the big thing for that is that environment can easily be spun up in the cloud and not easily spun up on your machine.
Right.
And so for me, I think a lot of, if we think about developer productivity and specifically cloud development, is going to be along those lines. So if you back all the way up from VS Code, then you can imagine that there are extensions which enable that, which we saw today, some pretty lightweight extensions. But if there are things that are in the tool that can be brought down that enable that experience, then we'll do that. Like a little bit like the Cloud Console. Did we talk about that? The Cloud Console, which is basically a connected experience up to the cloud. Are there more of those things that we can do? So tons and tons of opportunity.
It's interesting that you talk about it in that way, though, with the cloud. I was having a conversation between recordings with the guys from the Saturday Morning Linux Review, and one of them basically pointed out that the operating system is becoming less and less relevant because really, essentially, all your data and everything else is in the cloud.
Yep.
And so it's different from the view of the browser-based code editor in the sense that they kind of have to work around not having a file system and things like that. Whereas this approach is, hey, look, do your coding where you live, but at the end of the day, you have the cloud as a resource and it's a seamless reach.
Yep.
And so, it's interesting how the cloud can become more and more relevant. Yeah, and the standard development practice.
And the productivity things change a little bit, right? Because I can type fast and all that stuff, but there's all this other stuff that you have to do around it. That if you can eliminate that, then that is another way of increasing developer productivity.
Yeah, you get these things out of my way so that I can just be the coder. I don't have to be the DevOps guy and the the stand up the Docker guy and all that stuff.
Exactly. Yep.
Interesting. Very cool. So I'm kind of curious, and I think we have a few more minutes. So as you prepare for these keynotes, I know that they're rehearsed and, that you have pretty specific things you want to show off. But what's kind of the process for that? I'm just curious, you see the big productions that are put on at Build or at, WWDC or whenever there's a big announcement from, some big tech company. What's the process that Microsoft goes through? They decide what they want to showcase, who they want to showcase it. Practice.
So let's see. There's so many ways or things to talk about here. Let me figure out how to get started. So I would say that there are. Well, I can speak mostly of like the demo that we do here, which is it's a very end-to-end, hands-on. It's all live. Right. There is no faking. Yes, something goes wrong, we have plan B, but the whole goal is everything is live. And everything that we did today was completely live. The story, yes, we go, okay, we're going to do this, so we tell it all. But that, like distilling down, like we want to talk about serverless, we want to talk about this, that, the other thing, what's great for no developers, non-Microsoft, blah, blah. So you get this whole sort of story that you want to tell. And you go, okay, well, I've got all these different things to sort of bring into the mix. And basically you put it on the pot, you kind of stir it up and you figure out what's in there. And then you try to string it into a story that makes sense. And the way that I'd like to do a demo and tell the story is like really like how would it logically make sense if I was a developer that I was going to go and do this, right? Like PJs were always talking about like, the Julia Child's chicken and the turkey in the oven, right? It's like, I did this, let me go in the oven, and now here's the fully cooked chicken. Like, I don't personally like that, right? Like I want to like build the thing end to end because I
Right.
think it has credibility and it's more interesting. And if something goes wrong, it's almost okay, right? Because
Right.
people can feel that like you're walking on the edge here, right?
Yep.
And if you can pull it off, that's awesome. And if you can't, I'm probably going to give you a pass on the first failure. The second one, maybe not, but at least you tried, right?
Yeah, they had that in the keynote again during the AI or machine learning segment. Scott Hanselman wrote Portland 4 on the pad. It was doing numeric recognition, right? And it pegged it as a 4. And they went, oh, well, and one of them saying, well, let's try that again. And the other one saying, well, let's assume that it failed. And it was pretty obvious that it wasn't supposed to recognize whatever it scribbled on there.
Yeah. So like for us, for this keynote, at least the process that went through for Scott, and you can probably elaborate more on it. But from the demo perspective, really it starts a couple months ago. Right?
Yeah.
We kind of talk. We talk with Scott and other people about sort of what we're trying to do with VS Code and extensions in Azure and all that stuff. And we try to really present sort of the end-to-end experience from a developer perspective, right? Because that's what we're going to try to build. And so we kind of get on this sort of process of telling that story over and over again, and it morphs 1,800 times.
Right.
And we iterate, we try to get it to work, we try to get things fixed, we try to get other teams to build stuff, and it's really just this massive coordination because you're building out across all these different distinct product groups and bringing it together as it should be if you're a customer of the product, right? And there's not a lot of places where we do that except in these sort of big keynote things. So it's just a lot of work to try to pull all that stuff together. And then once you kind of get the story whittled down and it's like, okay, what are the steps? And then it becomes, how long does it take?
Right.
Because you have an allotted amount of time before
Right.
people lose interest in what it is that you're doing. And then it's a lot of rewriting and crying and lost evenings of sleep.
Coming on podcasts and saying, I didn't get this in the demo, but I wanted to.
Yeah, but those are good, right? Because those are like, okay, because of time.
Right.
Right? It's the things that were like, no, that was wacky. Why are you trying to do that?
And there's always more you want to put in because I think when you do demos like this, you start off with a either a theme or a scenario, and for us, I think it was sort of end to end cloud development productivity. And as you work through the story, and you have sort of your tools and technologies that you're looking to work in. Things that we like Docker and serverless and things like that. But as you go along, you're talking to other teams and you're discovering these new things. Like, oh, that is so cool and new, and I want to put that in there. Oh, and this thing, and some stuff doesn't fit in the story, and so you can't put it in. But a lot of stuff does. So you end up building this demo that you become really, really attached to, and then. The realities of putting it in large production like this. Like we only have so much time. We start off the show, so there's a lot of pressure for us to be on time, so don't put everyone else behind.
Right.
So you have to make some hard decisions, and some stuff doesn't make it. But yeah, it's a good process, and at the end, it's a very I don't know how to describe, but the product at the end of the day is much, much better because we're telling a cohesive end-to-end story where everybody comes at it from their thing, their passionate thing that they're building, right? And it looks good in that sandbox, but you really have to step back and try to play it out across the board. And it really pushes the way that we build the products at the end of the day, which is the right thing to have happen, right? Yeah. It's a great lever for somebody to pull and go, okay, let's make sure that everything makes sense. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, you just get a bunch of individual silos and nothing works together. And that's not good.
No, that makes total sense. I mean, it's the same thing with code. I think a lot of times we get focused on the typing stuff into the text editor. Yeah. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't make it to the server, then they're not going to be paying me for very much longer.
Right. Exactly.
And so just being aware of that, it's the whole process. Or, if I'm typing enough of the wrong stuff into the text editor and I don't have CI/CD set up, and so it's not catching my bugs because I'm not because it's not running the tests or, things like that. It's all part of the code story.
Yep. Yeah. So-
We're running out of time.
All right.
What were you going to say?
No, I was going to say it's I think we spent 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. yesterday rehearsing.
Yep.
Every conceivable scenario that could go wrong, we would make go wrong and see if we could bounce back.
But everything went right.
But everything went right.
On stage.
It's awesome. Yeah.
Everything was real.
Well, we appreciate all the work.
I hope it was fun.
Yeah, it was. I think after about an hour and a half, I was like, okay, I'm tired of this chair.
Yeah.
But I don't sit for that long. I mean, I guess I do when I record podcasts, but that's it.
They're pretty good chairs for a conference, though.
Yeah, they are.
Usually with the metal folding chairs.
That's true. Or the wooden ones with about a 1/4 inch of padding on them.
Yeah.
But yeah. Anyway, I don't remember if we've had you on the show before, PJ, but we do the picks. You mentioned the picks. So
I remember what I picked last year.
You do remember or you don't?
I picked the pizza oven.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Oh, I still want one of those.
Yeah.
Anyway, PJ, I'll let you go ahead and go first with picks.
Do you run your own freelance business? Or maybe you're thinking about picking up some business on the side? Well, then you need FreshBooks. FreshBooks is the quickest and easiest way to get invoices out to your clients. It's easy to use. It works anywhere, available from any device, on the desktop, iPhone, iPad, Android, and all of your data is backed up and secure. And it makes it really easy to get organized and get paid. You'll be tracking time, logging expenses, and invoicing your clients in no time. You can also save time billing, freeing up several days per month to focus on the work that you love, and you get paid faster. FreshBooks customers are paid on average 5 days faster because there's a link on the invoice that says pay me now. And it's a great way to grow your business. Plus, FreshBooks is offering a 30-day trial. That's right, 30-day trial if you try them out. So go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Once again, for a 30-day trial, go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section.
Well, I was going to say Katz's Deli. Pastrami sandwich.
So
Pastrami
good.
on rye.
We went last year. I went with AJ, who's on this show, and James and Andrew from the iFreak show. Oh my gosh. And I'm doing low carb now. And so I'm looking forward to going back and saying, yeah, just don't give me any bread.
Yeah.
But the meat's the good part anyway, right?
It's like
just give me a fork and a pile of meat.
Yeah.
We're good.
Let's see. What is mine? I think I have to go along the pizza lines again.
Keste?
I was going to say Keste Pizza in the West Village. We went there the other night. Great Neapolitan style pie. It was
Nice.
really, really good.
Of course, in Italy, they call Neapolitan style pie just pizza.
Yeah, I know.
I lived in Italy for 2 years. And
Oh, yeah?
yeah.
Where?
Mostly in the Northeast. So around Florence and then up by Venice.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
I spent 5 months in Verona.
Living the dream.
Yeah.
Well, you were living the dream.
Yeah, I was a Mormon missionary for 2 years over there. So
That's a pretty good place to go.
yeah, can't
Nice.
complain. It was
Yeah.
wonderful.
Good for you.
But yeah, I'm always on the lookout for a good place. Of course, I'm low carbing, so again, I just scrape the toppings off and eat those.
Yeah, you gotta. I just once a week, just gonna have.
There you go. Yeah, sometimes you just have to, right?
Yep.
So I've got a pick here, and I'm just going to go along the vein of stuff in New York. So last year was my first time in New York City, and so I just told them, look, I want to stay an extra 2 days. I'll pay for the hotel, blah blah blah, right? And so when we were out and about, I ran across this guy. He had a little device that was hanging around his neck that he would sell. Like, you could go see any number of so you go see 5 of 10 or 12 things in New York City.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, what the heck, right? So I bought it, because I could go see the Statue of Liberty and I could go up in the Empire State Building and stuff like that. And it turned out to be a really good deal.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I don't remember what it was called, but yeah, he was selling it right by the Empire State Building. And so since I had a ticket, I just went up. And I think it was 3 things, and then it included like Ridley's Believe It or Not. And it was like $40 or $50.
That's pretty decent.
And
Yeah.
I mean, just the ferry out to the Statue of Liberty and back is like $30.
Yeah.
So I definitely got a deal on that and just had a blast. So if you're coming out here, I'm betting that you could probably find those combo type tickets online and just get a deal and just do that. So.
Or go to the Empire State Building and look for a guy.
Yeah, and look for a guy with a hat. And I had a receipt. I swear it was like 4 feet long, right? And so I'd unfold it on the counter. I think you're this one.
Yeah.
But,
That's awesome.
it was a good deal, and I had a good time. So
Good.
I'm staying an extra day this time. I don't know what I'm going to do yet.
Did you go to the top of the One World Tower? One World Tower.
One World? Oh, that would be cool.
The World Trade Center. Buy your tickets in advance online. You get a little bit of a discount.
Wow, I'll have
It's
to do that.
definitely worth the trip.
Cool.
The elevator ride up and down is pretty wild. It's got LED screens all around it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So the trip up
Interesting.
is history. The trip down is like a flight.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Oh, that was the other one that I went to. So I went to the Statue of Liberty. I went to the Empire State Building, and then I went to the museum for
9/11.
World Center.
Yeah,
Trade
yeah,
Center.
that's awesome.
And they have 2 museums, and the one of them is kind of the bigger building, and then the other one's put together by like members of the family or whatever, and that was the one that I wound up going to. So it's not the big building in the middle of the plaza.
Oh.
It's actually a little bit over to the side, and they've got stuff from the towers and from the people and pictures of the. Anyway, it was really, really, really good.
Wow, I didn't know about that.
So I might have to go over there. But anyway, so yeah, New York City's been a fun trip the last 2 years.
Things to do, yeah.
All right. Well,
All right.
The last thing that I'm going to ask is if people want to see what you guys are working on these days, or if you have a blog, or they can follow you on GitHub or Twitter or anything like that. What are those handles or links?
Follow @code.
At code.
That is the coolest Twitter handle.
I know I was having fun tweeting @code, blah, 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 @code
Yeah.
all morning.
So there's that. Code.visualstudio.com obviously is a place to go get VS Code. And on GitHub, we're at github.com, obviously Microsoft/VS Code.
Mm-hmm.
And there's our roadmap and the wiki and iteration plans are all marked in there. Everything we do is basically out in the open. So
Feature requests happen on GitHub.
yes, definitely. Yep, post an issue.
Awesome.
And for more information on Visual Studio Live Share,
Yes.
aka.ns/VS Live Share. All one word.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. This is fun. It's always fun to chat.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll wrap this one up, and we will come at you next week.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.